to give you my best rendition of Hakuna Matata in a place like this, but I'll stick to what I know. Just a little bit about me. I teach MBAs at the Harvard Business School. They're a demanding audience. They usually come in smaller quantities than this, but on the other hand, they ask more questions, so we'll make the most of it. A lot of them want to start tech companies. They want to start their own, maybe run someone else's, and they find themselves scared. Many things to be scared of. They're not a bunch that scares all that easily, and yet they find themselves online with powerful enemies. We call it dancing with elephants sometimes, and we'll show you some of the things the elephants can do to you, either by accident or on purpose, as the case may be. The disclosures that I owe you, my clients don't love Google. On the whole. Who does, right? Well, actually, Google hired me to do something not so long ago, but I can't tell you about that. Look, I'm not here to speak for Google, I'm not here to speak for anyone else, but if I didn't tell you that there are people who both pay me and don't like Google, then Google would tell you that I had missed something important. There's something wrong here. I'm a glass half full kind of a guy, but there was a slide that we didn't see about the things that are great about the internet. And there's plenty to like, actually. Things that make me excited about the internet, the fact that you can reach your customers more quickly, more cheaply, more efficiently, do business in the way that you imagine probably should be the case without someone powerful standing in the way. Isn't that what got us all to come to this room today, and more generally to be interested in this set of opportunities? And yet, if you were inclined towards the glass half empty side of the world, you would see some real problems. What would you see? Well, there are all kinds of things that could stand in the way of the internet's efficiency. In the United States, we have the problem of internet access just being kind of expensive, actually. To get your home online, you're paying more money for internet access than you are, say, for electricity for a lot of people. That seems strange, right? The electricity requires burning stuff most of the time to get the electrons to flow. And the internet access doesn't seem like it's fundamentally as hard to do, and yet you pay good money for it. Publishers obviously struggling, a lot of them at least, to get the fair return that they expect. Now my slides advance on my own. This is really not acceptable. Google is the elephant that I'm going to spend my time talking about. And there are some good reasons for that. It's not just because I don't like Google. Actually, I do. I use their stuff all the time, and who doesn't, right? But they're incredibly powerful. If you've got hotel rooms to fill or plane seats to fill, if you're selling laptops or you're selling just about anything, you probably found Google is the easiest way to sell it, right? You're not really going to sell stuff on Facebook in any great quantities. Maybe some gurus will come here and tell you how it's done, but at least around where I come from, that just doesn't work very well. You want to sell to people who are searching to buy what you're trying to sell, and Google has a particular power there. The numbers are extraordinary, even more so in the rich parts of Europe than in the United States. In much of the United States, people still use Yahoo, people use Bing, and so you find yourself with a modest market share for Google of something like 70%, 75%. Here, of course, there are a lot of users who aren't internet experts. You ask them, what's a search engine that isn't Google, and they actually can't even name one, which isn't half as funny as it sounds when you really stop and think about it, that they don't know the name of a competitor. Oh my God, how is this going to unfold? So things that can go wrong. Let's just start as consumers. We all are consumers in addition to marketers. One interesting change in Google over the years is the number of ads. Here's the Google result page as it stood roughly at launch. These are reconstructed screenshots, but they give you a sense. Notice what isn't on the right side of the page. There's that beautiful empty white space where there are no ads. And as a consumer, I think when I changed to using Google more than a decade ago, it was because I really liked that white space. It wasn't clogged up with annoying stuff I didn't care about. Then Google added one column of ads, one little ad across the top, two ads across the top, a third ad on the top, Watch that carefully and we'll see if the slides can do it. Big, small. No, that's going forwards when I press the backwards button. What exactly is the process that happens after I press the cable, I feel? Okay. So let's just put our cards on the table, okay? I press the button. We imagine this wirelessly connects to a device which has a USB cable which connects to the computer. Actually, that's not what's happening now. I press the button. There's a guy who sees a light. If it's a green light, he presses the right arrow button. If it's a red light, he presses the left arrow button. Honest to God, I just saw it. It's not that Jonah doesn't know how to use the clicker. This is a beautiful room and not a satisfactory clicker. So, I'm now going to try to go forward. Forward, there we go. Did you see the font get bigger? All the ads went from smaller, before, backwards, forwards. I flew 4,000 miles to be here. 2,000 of you took your day. Someone will explain how they made this happen for you. Look, the ads got bigger. The ads used to be HTML font size equals -1. One day, Google said to themselves, ads are first-class citizens, why should they be any smaller than anything else on the page? So they took the ads and made them just as big, which works out fine if you're a person who likes ads, and a lot of people do, the Google execs among them. But also the ads can be kind of useful, right? You're searching for a laptop, these are ads from people who sell laptops. There's a certain logic to having the ads be big, and so they are. The ads have gotten bigger and bigger. If you find yourself forward, there we go. You find yourself searching, say, for a hotel. These days, you could get ads at the top, ads on the side. You could get this other box of green ads. Those are ads too. The amount of the screen space that isn't ads on a widescreen screen can be absolutely remarkable. It's almost all ads. Maybe a marketer's paradise, right? There are plenty of places to sell what you want to sell. Google is giving more space to advertisers. Why should we be unhappy about that? But as consumers, at least, it's something to remark on. The Google that we loved, that we came to a decade ago, isn't quite the same as the Google that we see today. All right, so that was one set of things consumers could be unhappy about. A lot of ads. Beyond that, I'd very briefly tell you a little bit about privacy, if this were all cooperating for me. My contract doesn't say anything about this. Google tracks a lot of data about you. I think in a room like this, most people know that Google tracks a lot of data about you. Some of it is so blindingly obvious to marketing professionals that it doesn't bear mention. So I'll just give you two examples that have come up in recent work. The Street View material is especially timely and especially relevant here in Germany because, of course, it's your privacy commissioner who blew the whistle on it. Lots of folks knew that Google was driving cars around that looked like that. They were taking pictures in all directions. That seemed kind of normal, right? Why shouldn't there be a car driving around taking pictures? But the German privacy commissioner went one better than everyone else in the world, myself included. They said, we want to see the code, we want to see the data, we want to know what you're really doing. Wouldn't you know it, it turned out Google had a Wi-Fi antenna on the car and it was listening to everything that was said by Wi-Fi when the car was in the area, which would sometimes include your passwords, sometimes include your emails in plain text. Then Google would be scooping that up and storing it in their data center forever. Wow, you didn't know they were doing that. And that's your German tax dollars at work. They found that, they caught it, they found it fair and square. The US Federal Communications Commission opened an investigation, asked Google for records. Google said it would be too hard to search their servers for the records of what they collected and when and how. If there's one company in the world that can't say it's too hard to run a search, right? So they were fined for deliberately impeding the investigation, and rightly so. When Google says it's too hard to run a search, they deserve the fine that they get. Here's one I caught personally, actually, 4 years ago, last month. The Google toolbar, when it was on your computer, had that nice little X in the top left corner next to where my mouse is, next to where it says Google. And if you didn't want to be tracked by the Google toolbar, you could click the X. You'd get this screen, which asks, do you want to disable permanently or only for this window? You'd click either of those options, you'd press OK, the toolbar would disappear from your screen, and then you feel you're safe, right? You've got something really sensitive to do, you don't want Google to track it, you very carefully and skillfully clicked the X, clicked OK, and now you can do the sensitive thing you don't want Google to know about. Seems pretty straightforward, right? There are high school students who could do this, there are probably elementary school students who could do this. But how do you know Google isn't continuing to track you? Sure, they said they're not tracking you. Are they or are they not? It's a computer forensics question. So here I went to the White House website, having just disabled my toolbar. Notice it's not there anymore. And what happened then? A message from my computer was sent to the toolbar queries server at Google. And what was in that message? It says, the guys at whitehouse.gov, you see it in the second red circle there, they were still tracking me, even after they had said they wouldn't, even after they had disappeared from the screen. Wow. You might think they really would be fined for a thing like that. No, it doesn't seem they were fined by anyone. No one really noticed, though. Google apologized for the error. It's a hell of an error, right? When Google makes an error, they get your passwords and your emails and what have you, track the data they're really not supposed to track. Okay, well, consumers have plenty to be unhappy about, but we are advertisers in this room, mostly, and so I want to talk about issues affecting advertisers for the balance of my time here. 3 items on the list. Does Google trick you into overpaying? What would it even mean? Savvy advertisers like yourself, how could you be tricked into paying 1 penny more than you want to be paying? Well, let me try to show you some examples. I really mean try. I regret making that thing turn yellow. Okay. So if you're on your Chrome web browser and you type in Expedia, enter, you kind of feel like that should take you to the Expedia website, right? Everyone knows a .com should be ended and added to the end, and that's it. Then you go to the site that you asked for. How does that actually work out for you in practice? When you type in Expedia and you press enter, you don't get taken to Expedia.com. No, you get taken to Google search results for Expedia. And then, if you're kind of clever, you'd come down. Thank you. Ta-da! I have one like this. It's like $23, and I bet it's going to work great. Even has, yeah. Perfect. So you might click on that red box at the top, Expedia official site. Seems kind of reasonable, right? It's the first thing you see. It tells you it's the official site. It gets you where you're going. But what happens then? Expedia just had to pay an advertising fee to Google to get a user who asked for Expedia, spelled it correctly, didn't type in the .com at the end, but otherwise was kind of doing pretty well. Google touts these remarkable services, autocomplete, instant search, where they save you a fraction of a second. Here, Google did something that wasted like 6 or 7 seconds of your time, but notice the important benefit to Google. It got Expedia to buy a paid ad click. You know, just last night I managed to find this screenshot of the original Netscape version 3, Netscape Navigator version 3, 1996, introduced that feature of automatically adding .com to the end if it wasn't present. So in 1996 this was working, and in 2014 it's not working. Why isn't it working? It's not working because Google finds it in their interest to tell Expedia they need to pay for that ad click. Okay, well if that was all that was going on, I think you'd shrug, you'd say Ben flew too far and he didn't really bring his A material. Let me give you a couple more. Suppose you're not that good at spelling, especially hard words like avenue. So you transpose a pair of letters. Here I got the U and the N backwards, and I was taken to a page of ads. It doesn't say they're Google ads, but I can tell you forensically it's easy enough to prove that they are. You misspell Saks Fifth Avenue, you get taken to a page of Google ads. The top one, of course, promotes Saks Fifth Avenue. And so you click on it and you go to Saks Fifth Avenue and you make the purchase you had in mind. But think about it from the perspective of Saks Fifth Avenue. they have paid to get an ad click that they should have gotten for free, right? Under federal law, under the US Anti-Cyber-Squatting Consumer Protection Act, this domain never should have been registered by one of Google's partners. Google never should have used it to show a typo squatting advertising. And it's all kind of a ruse. When you look in your performance report, it tells you that this ad is working great. It tells you a certain number of clicks and a certain number of sales, when in fact they're sales you should have gotten anyway. One more in this vein, Smiley Central. Stamp your feet if you ever had to clear some adware off of your friends and family's computers. There we go, we've got a good technician here, thank you. I do it too. We should be angry, right? The number of hours so many people in this room have had to spend cleaning off your friends' computers. I know you've done it even if you're too polite to stamp your feet. Well, this is one of those programs that you probably had to clean up a couple of times. When it's on a user's computer, it rearranges the toolbar of the user's computer in the following way. Notice that sneaky thing in the top left corner, My Web Search. There shouldn't be a My Web Search in the top left corner of Internet Explorer. That's not part of Internet Explorer. That's something that Smiley Central put there. So if your computer is all messed up and you decide it's time to call Dell and order a new one, well, you type www.dell.com into the top left corner to run that search for Dell, and what's going to happen? You don't get sent to the real Dell website, even though you spelled it correctly and punctuated it correctly, and even put it into the top left corner just like you were trained when you learned how to use web browsers a decade and a half ago. No, you get taken to the My Web Search site, for which the top result, of course, is a Dell ad. So here too, Google and its partners managed to find a way to claim a fee from Dell for a purchase that they didn't really do anything to cause or even to encourage. In fact, they stood in the way, right? They put this extra step in the middle. They were hurting the advertiser and yet charging the advertiser for it, and in the performance report, when you log into AdWords or whatever measurement tool you might use, this looks great to you. It looks like a high-performing, high-converting campaign when in fact it's kind of a ruse. You might be particularly interested to know who's behind Smiley Central. Who would do this kind of terrible thing to a user's computer? Barry Diller, CEO of Interactive Corp, probably some of you have heard of him, has a board, the board of directors of Interactive Corp. My favorite two board members, Chelsea Clinton and Michael Eisner. Whoa, powerful friends. I better watch my back. But in all seriousness, those are not necessarily board members who are well equipped to engage in online advertising practices. I have deep respect for both of them for the great things they've done professionally, but they're not experts on online advertising. They can't look at this and tell you whether it's legitimate or not, whether it's honest or not. They maybe should resign from the board or find some board members who actually know about online advertising who can tell Barry Diller to cut it out and stop this nonsense. All right, well, if you were to call your lawyers and tell your lawyers you don't like these shenanigans, you don't want to pay, they would direct you to the contract, Google's contract, which Google wrote. It says ads can be placed in any place where Google places ads. Some of you might be familiar with the work of Dr. Seuss, Green Eggs and Ham, Sam I Am. It kind of sounds like that. We place ads in the places where we place them, that's where they're placed, and you can't sue us for it. So, tough medicine. Advertisers pay a little bit more to Google than they should have, and they can't necessarily climb out of the hole. I've encouraged you to question whether the measurement consoles truly tell you how well your paid search ads are working. Notice the phenomenon in each of these examples. In each of these examples, the advertiser sees a performance report telling them how many new computers they've sold, if you're Dell, by buying that ad from Google. And in fact, the performance report is just not correct. It's very precise, but it's not accurate. Actually, that's quite a fundamental problem with many of these measurements. You might ask yourself, if you looked at this campaign from Lufthansa, how well does it really work? User searches for Lufthansa, sees the paid ad in the red box, clicks the ad and buys some plane tickets. So Lufthansa is congratulating themselves on this excellent, high-performing ad. But this is a customer they would have had anyway, right? If they hadn't advertised, if the green box had just slid upwards and the red box wasn't there, they would have sold the same number of plane tickets and they wouldn't have had to pay Google anything. Well, you can generalize this question. What if an advertiser stopped buying its own trademarks in AdWords? And these nice guys at eBay Research actually did that. They stopped buying the paid search for eBay's trademarks. That's this. Went down to 0, and wouldn't you know it, the organic traffic went way up. Later, they turned it back on. The green bar, paid search, goes back up, and the organic goes back down. Why are they buying this stuff? Why is eBay sending tens of millions of dollars up the street to Google? It's only 20 miles, right? And yet, a huge amount of money, transfer of wealth from one American company to another American company, but not really doing much for them. Their summary, no short-term brand benefits. My summary, the consumer was already going to buy from you anyway, so why waste your money advertising to it? There might be answers to that. Build your long-run brand. Maybe this is only a short-term effect. Maybe you can put just the right offer. You're not vulnerable to all kinds of SEO questions. But it's a pretty alarming chart. I've given you the citation to the eBay paper there where you can read all about how they did this experiment and think about how you do it in your own company. Well, 2 more in my limited remaining time. Does Google stunt the growth of competing sites that advertisers might want to use? I think they do, and I'd like to show you some examples of that. If you're searching for almost any stock ticker symbol these days, you see a first link, a second link, and a third link that all take you to the same place, Google Finance. And so, wouldn't you know it, Google Finance has become kind of a popular site. It's not the most popular as finance sites go, but then again, it arrived, what, a decade after Yahoo began this business, so you might not expect it to grow all the way to #1 quite that quickly. If you're an advertiser selling finance services, you're hoping to play these sites off against each other. Try to get a better price from Yahoo Finance than you can get from Google Finance, or what have you, among all of the others. If this traffic were ever to become 100% consolidated at one service like Google's, then as an advertiser you'd expect to pay a higher price, a monopoly price. Actually, we see things like that happening in many areas. Here, my friend Rocky Agarwal went on Bloomberg. Bloomberg paid for the cameraman, paid for the studio, hair and makeup, servers, all the equipment needed to produce high-quality, commercial-quality television. You would think that Bloomberg, having done that work, should have their site, Bloomberg.com, as the #1 result when you search for whatever it is that that clip was about. But no, actually. YouTube, which also got a copy of the video, YouTube somehow is the #1 result for Bloomberg's own video, and Bloomberg is down here all the way at the very bottom. The YouTube result has that beautiful thumbnail, it has 4 minutes, it has metadata. It really looks like something pretty nice to be YouTube because you get that guaranteed top placement. So this is the core of what the European investigation of Google for competition problems, what it's all been about. If you've seen Almunia's statements in the press, the announcements of some improvements coming out as recently as just last week, a 3rd round of amended proposals from Google, they're promising to stop doing this quite as much. And I guess that's commendable, although as you've seen in other parts of the talk and more to come in just a moment, there's plenty more that could be done. I want to close with material that excludes competition. This is like the worst thing you can do. If you're an antitrust lawyer and you see someone excluding competition, taking affirmative steps to make it harder for competitors to compete, that's really bad. That's the thing the antitrust lawyers get upset about. Since I am one, I guess I can especially channel their unhappiness. If you think back to other kinds of conversions and synchronizations, computers are super good at converting data formats, right? This is one of the things computers are best at. You've got a file in Word format, you want to save it in WordPerfect format. Guess what? Microsoft Word can do that, even to this day. Outlook and iPhone, obviously Microsoft and Apple are not big allies in the grand scheme of things, but you can hook your Outlook to your iPhone so that your emails and your contacts and your calendar all link in just the way you expect. So how about AdWords and Microsoft Ad Center? How well can you hook them together? You could imagine wanting to have a campaign export feature so that your AdWords campaign would get sent over to Ad Center. Then when you buy a new keyword in Google, it will be in your Ad Center campaign also. You could even synchronize it in the other direction so that if you change something in Ad Center, it gets changed in AdWords. Computers are good enough to do this kind of thing. So if you're Google and you don't want that to happen, how do you stop it? Call in the lawyers. And here's what Google's lawyers did to stop the computers from copying the data. Functional separation. You can only use the API to manage and report on AdWords accounts, only to collect data, and you cannot move data from an AdWords account to a non-AdWords account, or vice versa. Wow, you know, the lawyers must have had fun when they were writing that. That was the final page of my Senate testimony 5 years ago when Google wanted basically to lease out the Yahoo search platform in the United States. Competition lawyers saw that, declared Google a bully, told them to cut it out and get out of here. In the mobile context, actually, Google's practices have become even more brazen. Just last week, I posted to my website some confidential documents that I managed to get through litigation that answer the question of why so much of the Android screen is systematically Google Apps. You might think it's Google Apps because users love Google, because users want Google Apps, and there's probably an element of that, but actually, it's not just that users want it, it's also that Google requires it. I hope you can read some of that. I worked hard to get this contract language for you. It says, devices may only be distributed if all Google applications authorized for distribution are pre-installed. And it continues, you have to make the Google applications the defaults. You have to make them prominent. You can't put anything else in this context. You can't have any other pre-installed search, and on it goes. When you look at your phone and it comes with a bunch of Google stuff, you shouldn't think it's that way because Samsung believes you want it that way. Maybe they think you do, maybe they think you don't, but it's that way because Google insists on it. Hell of a lot worse than anything Microsoft ever did, if you ask me. Maybe over coffee in a minute we can debate exactly that. So my takeaway, you know, Google is aggressive. I've got lists and lists of ways that Google ties their products so that when you have one, you have to take some others too. So long as you're happy to be in Google's corner of the world, that might not be a bad place to be. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people don't want to be in Google's corner of the world. It's not a great place to be, to have one company controlling advertising, standing between the advertisers and the consumers, collecting a fee for the sales that they genuinely cause, and collecting a fee for the sales that would have happened anyway. We're better off with those profits being split between consumers, between the advertisers, between the publishers, but not all getting sent off to California. And I say that as someone who lives a little closer to California than most of you. Even so, I'd rather see you get to keep your money than send it in our direction. Well, with that, I am over the time. I congratulate the team for fixing the clicker. You'll get the benefit of that for the rest of the time. And thanks for your interest in this material.